Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Game Informer Show. This is the show where we inform you about games, and I am your host, Ben Reeves. Today, joined on the show, not one, not two, but three great guests. First up, Marcus Stewart. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Good. I called you a guest, but you're my friend, right?
I guess, like, what is a guest than a friend?
A friend who's not close enough yet.
Yeah, it's a weird gray area.
That's right. I like to think my family is my guest.
Extended guest.
Extended guest. I guess I've grown up with. Brian Shea, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Welcome. And last but not least, David L. Craddock. How's it going?
It's going pretty well, although now I don't know if I'm a guest or a friend. I'm in this gray area. Maybe we'll decide before the end of the show where I fall.
See how it goes. We'll see how it goes for sure. Yeah. You're obviously first time on the show. Welcome. You don't work for Game Informer. People may or may not be familiar with you. You're an author. A couple of books, Let's Stay a While and Listen, which chronicles the creation of Diablo, and Breakout, how Apple II launched and started a PC gaming revolution. Just a few of the books. But I don't know. How might people be aware of you? What do you describe yourself as? Author?
Author, yeah. I do fiction, nonfiction, specialize in grocery lists that I ignore and just kind of, play it by ear when I get to the store. But really, yeah, mostly author. I think most people know me from my books about video game development and how these things that we love to play are made.
How long have you been doing that?
17 years. I have you were half right. I have a couple books, a couple dozen. I'm up to about 24 now. I've done traditional publishing, self-publishing. I'm kind of all over the map. I specialize in a lot of, I know retro is like in vogue. It's almost oxymoronic how retro is modern and hip now. But I love to write about older games because, a lot of games like Diablo 1 and 2 and XCOM came out before we had super awesome collector's editions with making of documentaries and art books and stuff. So it's just kind of fun for me to tell those stories.
Yeah, sure. I know you mentioned XCOM. You have a Kickstarter going right now for XCOM, an XCOM book. What's the most interesting thing you've learned so far researching XCOM?
How the game really was almost 90% incomplete until like the final few months when they had to code up all the AI, do a lot of play testing. And that's partly why they left in a lot of really interesting stuff. Like it is possible to clear a map of aliens by just lobbing a grenade from one corner of the map to the opposite corner. That can happen. That can work. And QA was like, yeah, we like this. We think this is fine. We also have to release in 2 months. So let's push this through. But that's kind of the fun of games like XCOM with the hyphen and without the modern reboot is that experimental sort of emergent gameplay that really keeps you coming back and replaying the missions.
Sure. Did you dig up members of the old team and talk to them?
I did. So first and foremost, I talked with Julian Gullop, and he was kind enough. I reached out to him for an endorsement for Stay a While and Listen, which you mentioned earlier, and he liked it enough that I said, hey, since I know you now, could we do interviews about your story? And so that's where Monsters in the Dark, the making of XCOM UFO Defense came from. I start with Julian as a boy when he said, chess is getting boring. Let me start adding my own rules, my own game pieces. And from there, working on classic games that were more known in the UK, such as Laser Squad and Chaos Reborn. And the book goes from there through XCOM, where I talk to even more designers from Microprose UK. And there's a fun kind of rivalry there because Microprose UK was considered kind of the most stepchild to Microprose US, which made Civ. And so the UK company signed Julian Gullop and his brother Nick and their company Mythos Games to make XCOM because they said, you know what, we want a big strategy game so that we can show Microprose that there are just as awesome and epic of games out there as Civilization. In fact, they added the UFOpedia because they said, well, Civilization has an encyclopedia, so we need one too. And all sorts of cool little stories that came out like that. So it was a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, game developers are very competitive, it turns out.
They really are.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's fun to have a historian like you on the show. So thanks for joining us. We normally kick off the show with our playlist, which is just the games we've been playing recently. Brian, do you want to go first? What have you been up to?
I'm completely boring. Still playing Final Fantasy X, still playing Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, and I did start up Hades last night.
That's right.
But yeah, I haven't made a whole lot of progress on it yet. But I have made the jump from playing on Epic Game Store to Switch because of the aforementioned reasons I brought up, where it was like, it just feels so tough for me to sit in front of my computer any longer than I have to in like the work from home environment. So my PC gaming has grinded to a halt, and now it's all about sitting on the couch and relaxing instead of sitting in the exact same place that I work from every single day. So that's my new adventure, I guess.
Here's a trick. Try grabbing your laptop and just sitting in front of your TV and just work from there.
I'll just carry my entire PC tower over there.
Yeah. I think then you'll want to go work. You'll want to go to your desk afterwards and just play around.
That's true. I'll just bring out the action figures.
That's right. Perfect.
I was collecting them for a reason.
Let's see. I think we have a breaking special bulletin. Was there some movie stuff you could talk about? I heard.
Yeah. So I had a chance to see the first 13 minutes of the Mortal Kombat movie, which is the opening scene. And I also was able to talk to the director and the producer of the movie. I'm very impressed. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. If you do want to get kind of like the spoilery rundown of what happens in that opening scene, you can go to GameInformer.com and read the full preview. But it really does a great job of setting the tone for, like, it establishes a lot of backstory of like what's going on. It's primarily focused on Hanzo Hasashi and Bihan, who are the Scorpion and then the original Sub-Zero. So there's really cool kind of laying the foundation of their relationship, as a good reboot of that franchise should, seeing as how they're definitely the two most well-known characters in terms of like the mainstream audience is concerned. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it comes out. It seems like the director and the producer are doing a really careful job of making sure that they can modify some things, because like you can't just take things wholesale from the video game and expect it to translate perfectly when you're working, moving an interactive medium piece of entertainment over to a passive medium like film. And so they're doing a good job of kind of monitoring like what elements would work, what elements are a little bit flexible. And talking to them, it was interesting to hear like the stuff that they were like their non-negotiables when they were pitching the movie to Warner Brothers. It was like, first, it has to be R-rated, which was really, really reassuring to me. Like, I knew that this movie was R-rated, but like they had that vision from the get-go. That was like the first thing. It had to be a diverse cast. It had to not have any movie stars. They had to use no like big name movie stars playing these roles. They had to have real martial artists. And then there was one more thing that I completely forgot what it was, but
real actors.
Well, the martial artists were like, all the actors had to be real martial artists, and like that kind of paid dividends in the way that it shows up. Hold on one second. I'm gonna look.
I mean, it's not hard to be called a martial artist. I took a ninjutsu class like in high school for 6 months, and I asked the teacher, I was like, when can I start calling myself a ninja? And he was like, well, I mean, I guess you're in the class, so now I don't know. And so technically, I'm a ninja.
The last thing is that it has to be like the backstories of the characters have to feel loyal to the source material. And basically, I was talking to the producer, Todd Garner, and he said that like they kind of stuck to their guns, and it took 7 years to get the movie made, but here it is. But he was like, but in that time, since like the movie was made, movies like John Wick and Deadpool kind of proved that an R rating was, something that could sell gangbusters at the box office, while movies like Crazy Rich Asians and Black Panther showed that like people will definitely go see like a movie with a diverse cast. And that was kind of like the proof to Warner Brothers that like all these demands were really viable from like a financial standpoint. And it's like, yeah, in those 7 years, it seemed like the rest of the film industry kind of caught up to what our thinking was in that time. So it's interesting that like how much the landscape changed when he framed it like that, of like, oh, it used to be thought that like, these elements weren't like ways to sell. It's like, you look at the 95 Mortal Kombat movie. He didn't say this. This is me kind of like talking about like how you look at the 95 Mortal Kombat movie and it was largely framed around like Johnny Cage and Sonya. And it's like, you don't necessarily have to have the two white heroes in the middle of the story. It can be, a much broader cast to kind of, and still be like a really like popular in the mainstream story. And like, that's great that the studios are starting to come around to that, because, it's that's what Mortal Kombat I think is all about, is like this group of diverse characters from like a broad ranging of backgrounds. And it seems like they're sticking to that with this movie. And I think the opening scene establishes that this is like kind of a different take on it, but like still feels very authentic to the Mortal Kombat lore.
I feel like we're beating around the bush a little bit. Like, how was it? Like, what did you think of the 13 minutes you saw?
I thought the 13 minutes were awesome. Like, you can kind of see what they were talking about with like having real martial artists in these roles, because
they didn't call me, by the way. I'm kind of disappointed.
Yeah, he said you didn't answer.
Oh, they did call me.
Spam on your phone.
Yeah.
So it starts off in the past. That's all I'll say about that. And it does feature the characters who go on to become Scorpion and Sub-Zero. And there's a lot of really great choreography. Definitely some artistic shots surrounding like the use of blood. It's definitely very bloody, but it feels tastefully done. And I mean, I guess there is like I said, you can read all the nitty gritty details on GameInformer.com in the article that I wrote, but I really enjoyed it. I think that they're doing a really great job. The 13 minutes that I saw really set the tone effectively for like what this movie is going to be. And all of the action looked really well choreographed, really well thought out, really well performed. And yeah, I'm really excited. If like this is kind of like a taste of what's to come for the full movie that comes out next month, like I'm all in.
I think I was on board when I saw the trailer and I watched Sub-Zero freeze a dude's blood and stab him with it, turn it into a knife. Like, that was awesome. I don't have a huge love of Mortal Kombat when I was from the early games, but like the last few entries, I've definitely grown to appreciate a lot more, partially because of the just absurd over the top narratives that they put into those games. And I've played those games. I'm like, this could almost be a movie. I mean, it almost feels like, is it that absurd? Does it fall in line with what they've been doing over at NetherRealm?
So far, it basically feels like an origin story in these first 13 minutes. And they cover a lot of ground in terms of like, just with like the backstory of these characters in a very short period of time. And I think that this was more just setting the table for the actual Mortal Kombat stuff that's going to happen throughout the rest of the movie. So it's hard to say like how over the top they're going with the story, but because like what I saw was very much grounded. I mean, there's definitely, again, not to spoil too much stuff, but like there's powers and stuff being used and like kind of like stuff that you would not expect a real person to be able to do. So like they're definitely embracing that from the choreography perspective. And also, Scorpion can freeze people, or Sub-Zero can freeze people, and Scorpion has a spear that he twirls around and attacks people with. So it's like there are things that like are definitely playing into the Mortal Kombat lore, but at the same time,
that's normal ninjutsu stuff, by the way.
It feels very grounded. Yes.
Marcus, you're a huge fan of Mortal Kombat. Are you excited for this movie?
Yeah, I was impressed with that trailer. Like Brian and I, we did a trailer reaction when that first came out, and I was pleasantly surprised. Like, I don't think I ever thought this movie was gonna like suck, but I think my bar for video game movies is kind of permanently towards the ground. So it was one of those things where like, oh yeah, this just looks like the game, like the fight scenes, this just looks like the X-ray attacks. Most of the characters look really good, design wise. They even got they snuck in the old song, like the first movie song in there too. So I'm actually like getting more and more excited. And I just realized that I guess it's technically like less than a month away now.
Like April 16th, I think.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, like I'm allowing myself to hope with this one.
So that's interesting because they were talking about how the music, they modified and slowed down the original movie theme and turned that into Raiden's theme in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
So there's like little hints and like homages to like stuff that's happened before. And just talking to the producer and the director, like they had a pretty keen sense of like what's going on in the franchise now. Like Todd Garner referenced Cassie Cage in one of his answers. So it's not just like he knows like, oh, I know Reptile and Scorpion and Liu Kang. Like he was he was talking about how like the movie franchise or the game franchise has evolved over the past 30 years and how like, all right, well, we have to kind of evolve with that while still kind of telling like the backstory of this universe.
So we're going to see famous characters like Dairo and Cobra and this
Raicho puking and burping and
Raiko.
Are some of those G.I. Joe characters?
Meat.
Oh yeah, Meat. I love Raiko, but he's not exactly an A-list character to most Mortal Kombat fans.
Which one's Raiko?
Fair question.
There you go. He's got paint on his face or something.
He's like a general. Is his lore?
He's like Shao Kahn's son? No? Oh, wait,
well,
no.
Like in the Mortal Kombat. Yeah, he's in the Mortal Kombat 4 Gold ending. I'm also a huge fan. He sat on Shao Kahn's throne and put on the helm, so everyone was like freaking out, like, "Oh, is he Shao Kahn? Is he the new Khan?" And now that they've played with that with Kotal Khan in the new games and stuff.
Yeah, this is the most anyone's talked about Raiko in years, by the way.
Yeah, there you go, Raiko. If you have a bingo card,
even his parents don't talk about him this much.
No.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. Well, yeah, it sounds promising. I'm excited for Mortal Kombat. It's out soon, like we said. Cool. Thanks, Brian. And if people want to read more about this stuff, they can go on the site, sounds like.
Yep, GameInformer.com. The headline is "The Mortal Kombat movie makes a great first impression."
Sweet. Awesome. Let's see. Marcus Stewart, how's it going? What have you been playing?
Ben, Halloween's come early for me because I've been playing like spooky stuff lately. So I recently wrapped up my review of Mundaun, which you can go on the site to see. And it's this really neat looking kind of like, I don't say not survival horror, kind of like an adventure horror game where it's set in a real life town in Switzerland called Mundaun that's in the mountains. And you play as this guy who returns there to find out what happened to his grandfather who passed away under mysterious and some might say dubious circumstances. And when he gets to the village, he kind of finds out that it's been overtaken by this kind of decades long curse. And it's kind of falls on his shoulders to try to get rid of it. And the thing that stands out about this game most is the art style. It has this really, really cool looking like charcoal pencil style look. Like I watched like a making of video where because the game was largely made by one guy who literally hand drew every texture in the game with like charcoal pencils, and it just looks like if you took a really kind of demented looking sketchbook and animated it, it looks really neat, and it adds to that game's kind of creepiness. Like a lot of the character faces just look kind of off, and you stare at something for too long, you're like, I don't like that guy.
Yeah, I saw this game in trailer form, and it does look really cool visually. It has just such a striking look where I'm like, why don't more people do this? Because I love those old charcoal sketches. Yeah. Calling it a sketch look almost does disservice to it because I think it looks good.
Yeah, I don't think it's sketchy because it's like the characters don't look like realistic. It looks like they're stylized enough to which I like. And the way they are animated too is kind of stilted, which in other games might be a problem, but I think it fits this game because it kind of lends itself to like, oh, this is like a sketchbook that's come to life. And I was worried that I would get tired of the look because it's just a lot of like grays and dark tones, but I never did. And I think that there's enough like variation in the shaders because and you move from like grassy plains to like a lake to snow because you're kind of gradually working your way up this mountain as the story progresses. And the game itself is pretty solid. It's pretty standard. Like, you're going around collecting clues and kind of putting things together of like, oh, I need a key for this door, or I have a talking severed goat head who's kind of telling me where I need to go next. And so it's like the puzzles are fine, but it's not super surprising or Like if you're a veteran of these kind of horror games, nothing's probably going to blow you away from like a gameplay standpoint, but everything that's present is solid. I think the inventory management's a little clunky, and there's a car that you get. It's like a hay truck that you drive around because the world is relatively big. It's like a semi-open world, and you're kind of moving from different buildings and stuff. And driving that car could feel better. But I think the mystery around it is actually pretty good. It's more straightforward than I expected. But in this case, I didn't mind it because it was like, it's creepy and I'd rather it be straightforward than something overly convoluted. So it's like, you'll probably see where it's going about halfway through, but I think it's like the antagonist is like genuinely kind of creepy. And
is this mostly a puzzle game, the way you're describing it, or is there action in it?
There is some combat, but it's completely optional. Like there's actually an achievement if you go through the game without like harming anything, because it's like separated into like, during the day, you're just exploring, nothing happens. But at night, these monsters come out. There's not a ton of them. I think there's like maybe 3 different enemy types. And you can just completely sneak by them, or you can use either a pitchfork, which you can very slowly stab them with, or you can use a rifle that you get kind of towards the back half of the game. But shooting doesn't feel good at all. It's like a lot of weapon sway. You can mitigate that because like one of your character traits, there's 3 character traits you can upgrade. One of them is like your rifle handling. And so if you jack that up, it's a little bit more stable, but it still never feels all that good. So honestly, it's relatively easy to sneak by everything. So I just kind of did that.
You think this game still manages to be scary though, even though combat's pretty easy to avoid?
Yeah, I think the atmosphere, it's just got a really creepy and kind of foreboding atmosphere. Like, again, from like just looking at everything and just like, I don't know. And something about like, because the entire language is, I don't know, is it Swiss? I don't know what the language would be.
Dutch. That we're speaking right now?
What they speak over there. I'm sorry.
Oh.
It's all in, that language. And I don't know, that kind of lends itself a little bit of like, it's subtitled, but like, it's like, it just kind of sounds a little creepy because the way you're kind of freaking out. There are a few really big jump scares that are pretty bad, but they don't, bad in terms of like they made me almost have a heart attack. But the game doesn't go overboard with them, which I appreciate. It really does just rely on its tone and its atmosphere to kind of keep you on edge the entire time. So I don't think this game is like terrifying consistently, but it does kind of leave you on edge for most of it.
Yeah, that's cool. This is Mundaun. Is that how you pronounced it?
Mundaun, you got it.
Not to be confused with Manamadan, which is what I thought you were talking about when you first described it to me. I was like, wait, the new one's out already? Well, didn't they just do that? What did you give this one?
7.75.
Okay. So maybe worth looking at a trailer at least just to see what you think of the art style, because I dug the look of it.
Yeah. And the other game I picked up was Devotion, because you can buy that game now again.
Oh, yeah. This is the one that got banned off of the Steam store for a while, right?
Yeah, it came out February of 2019, and then like days later was delisted because it was discovered that there was like an in-game poster that made fun of the current Chinese president, and that drew the ire of some players in China. And so the developer is a Taiwanese developer named Red Candle Games. They were kind of forced to pull the game from Steam, and then it had been unavailable for sale for almost 2 years. It was supposed to go back on sale on GOG in December last year, and then like they announced it on Twitter, like, hey, it's coming back to GOG, and then CD Projekt like 2 hours later was like, no, it's not, and then that just never happened.
Yeah, it's one of those games where I wonder if all this, I mean, this isn't quite hype, but I wonder if all this like news and fervor has helped it out. Do you think? How much have you played? Do you think it like lives up to its what people think of it now? Yeah, well, I mean, it was like, even in the few days it was out originally, it got like really good reviews because there were some outlets that got their hands on it and played through it, and like players, like people were raving about it at the time, which is why it was so painful to like, only a select few people got to play this game. And so I haven't finished it. I put about 2 hours in. I don't know how long it is, but yeah, it is supremely creepy. It's a lot of PT vibes. Like you're going through,
this house, and in like a PT way, it's kind of repeating loops over and over, and you're going through different versions of this relatively small like apartment. And from what I can gather, it's just a story about your child who is sick, and your wife who's like a former like celebrity, like a movie star. And then things just getting progressively creepy with each loop. It's like in a very PT way, you just kind of get the vibe of like, I don't want to be here like in this house. Like, I feel like I should not be here, but I can't leave. And, it's got
I feel most days.
Yeah. When I wake up, I'm like, what am I doing here?
I can't leave. That's how I feel right now. I'm trapped in the show. Please.
And yeah, it's like a mix of jump scares. It's a mix of like more psychological stuff. There's some puzzle solving involved, but nothing super crazy. But you're kind of afraid to turn around constantly because, it'll play tricks with your mind every now and then. Like there's one bit where like, there's like these mannequins that are in the living room suddenly. And every time, this thing, every time you move, they kind of like move a little bit, which personally, trick. I hate that because I hate dolls that come alive. That's probably the thing that scares me most in just life is like moving dolls or mannequins.
Well, the good thing is that doesn't happen.
Not normally, at least that you can see. I haven't turned around in years because I'm afraid to see what's shifted behind me.
Clearly, Marcus has been through some trauma that we don't want to get in here.
Yeah, let's not
remember the 80s movie Mannequin, about the mannequin that came to life?
I've never seen that movie in its entirety.
Isn't it weird that wasn't a horror movie? Like that's a romantic comedy. It's so weird.
Yeah, I thought so too. The 80s were weird, it turns out. But Chucky was like, I used to hate Chucky as a kid because he's probably the reason for it. But yeah, I can see why people were going crazy for this back in the day. I'm excited to finish it. Like I said, I don't know how long it is, but it seems like it's got some meat to it based on because you can kind of see all the notes that you can find. And I'm like, oh, I think I've only got like a third of these so far. So it's like, oh, that's exciting. But then also, oh God, like what else?
What am I in for at this point? Yeah. Did you play Visage, Marcus?
No, I still need to.
Yeah. That one's another one that's like, it's pretty scary and pretty intense. And I remember back when, was this just last fall? It feels like it was forever ago.
Yeah. It wasn't.
Dan was really talking about it a lot when it came out. And so it's reminding me of what you're saying about Devotion. Feels like kind of cut from the same cloth, let's say. So maybe check that out. But you would say check out Devotion before Mundaun, right? Mundaun. Gosh, I can't say it. I can't do it.
Yeah, I'd say for now, check that out first. I bought it immediately, mainly out of paranoia of like, Red Candles is selling it directly through their website, like DRM free for PC and Mac. So, but just get it now. Just pretend that it's going to get pulled again for some reason.
Before they find some statue of Putin in there or something. Yeah,
exactly. So
who knows what they hid in there.
I'd say do this first. And then, if you want some more spooky stuff, jump them on Dawn.
Cool. Yeah. You were also talking about a game called Red Ronin, I thought.
Oh yeah, I've been playing that. I think that's available now. I haven't finished it, but yeah, that's it's like a cool little strategy game that's they described as being a cross between Into the Breach and Katana Zero. And I love Into the Breach. I never played Katana Zero, but I've seen like footage of it. And yeah, that about sums it up. It's pretty much just a faster pace Into the Breach where you play as this woman. I forget if she's a bounty hunter, but it's set in kind of this like cyberpunk near future world. And like Into the Breach, the entire arena is kind of like grid based, and you're trying to make your way either to the exit or trying to kill everyone in the room. But it does the thing of like, when you move, your enemies are going to move and you know where they're going to move. So you're trying to map out your kind of like your path. And it's really slick so far. Like I think I'm on the second chapter, and like when you line up attacks, like if you get people in your path, you'll just like slice through them with your katana and just keep going. There's different abilities where you have like a little robot buddy that's floating around, and you can eventually unlock the ability where he can set little directional pads in the ground. Because once you pick a path, you're committed to it. But then if you set this pad, you can kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to have him send me up when I hit this point. And so much like Into the Breach, it becomes a lot of like a puzzle game of like, okay, if I go up here, then I'll dodge this guy because he's going to come in my path if I keep going the way I am. And the level design plays with that in a lot of fun ways. And the thing that's impressed me also so far is that it seems like it's a different mechanic with each world. Like the second world is entirely stealth based, where you're facing these robots who have a vision scope. So they can see about like 3 tiles ahead. So you kind of have to plan for that. And you can't attack them at all. You can only avoid them. So it's like, okay, that's completely different than what I was doing in the first chapter. That's cool.
So is this, sorry, got to clarify because there's so many games like this. It feels like is this a roguelike or is this just a straight up, like they designed a narrative campaign?
It's a narrative campaign.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Like each
That's
chapter
cool.
is
I want to check that out then.
Yeah. Like each chapter is like, I think like, I want to say like 8 to 10 rooms, and you're just gradually making your way through and through. And, you know, if you failed, you just start from the beginning, not the beginning of the world, but the beginning of that map, and then just go again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting segue because I played a game that sounds very similar, and I'm curious to get your take on this too, Marcus. Fights in Tight Spaces.
Yeah, that game's cool.
Yeah, which is a cool game. It's similar in that it does remind me a little bit of Into the Breach, but also it's like a tactical game, which as a XCOM guy, David, I don't know, have you heard of Fights in Tight Spaces?
I haven't heard much about it, no, but my interest is piqued now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to draw too many parallels to XCOM, but it is a strategy game, just like XCOM's strategy game. But it also reminds me of, as a lot of games these days, Slay the Spire, because you're basically building a deck of cards, and then the deck of cards function as your move set, and then the actual gameplay takes place on a really small chessboard. You know, sometimes it's like 9 by 9 squares. It's like pretty small. And so it's you in like a bathroom or an alleyway with a couple of other goons, and you're fighting these guys, and you'll have different attacks that do different amounts of damage or attack from different distances. Or sometimes you'll have moves that allow you to grab a guy and move them to another part of the board. So you might be able to move them in front of an enemy's line of fire. So that's another way to do damage to people. So a lot of it's like you moving around the board, finding ways to avoid attacks, and then also dealing your own attacks. There's counterattack cards that you can do. So like if you're stuck and about to get hit, you can do a counterattack or a block and kind of mitigate the damage. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's still early access right now, but coming out later this year, I think. But you can download it now and check it out while the early access build is up.
Yeah, I think there's like a free prologue chapter that I believe is still available on Steam. And it's a pretty substantial chapter.
Yeah, that'll give you a good taste for the game and let you know whether or not you dig it or not, which I'm having fun with it. So I'm looking forward to the full thing later this year. It has a really cool, simple aesthetic too, kind of black and white. I think you're some kind of like FBI agent or some kind of secret agent,
basically.
Yeah. Going out on missions.
You're like fighting bikers and ninjas.
As FBI agents do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So that's what I recommend checking out. But David, thanks for being patient with us. You want to jump in? What have you been playing lately?
Oh, no worries. So I've been playing, we'll get to Animal Crossing and my 600 some hours in that in a bit, but I've been playing a lot of Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, which, funny enough, even though this is partly a re-release of a Wii U game, was one of my most anticipated games. I don't know if this is a particularly hot take, but Mario 3D World is my favorite 3D Mario game. The more single player exploration focused Marios, kind of in the vein of Mario 64, I think are good, but they've never really scratched that platforming itch for me. There's a lot of crossover with Zelda that sometimes I just feel like, well, this is cool, but I'd rather play a Zelda game. But 3D World, I finally 100%ed it, which I wasn't able to do on Wii U for whatever reason. There's a final mystery house in the last secret world that's like, you have to get 30 stars back to back to back to back to back. You have 10 seconds per like room. And I finally finished that. That was a moment on par with finally saving Princess Toadstool, as she was known back then in the original Super Mario Brothers game. I know it was pretty wild. But
do you have any insight into why they changed that? It was just a marketing thing.
I feel like
Peach. That's a dumb name.
I feel like that was probably it. I remember Mario 64, they were hedging their bets because she says, "Yours truly, Princess Toadstool, Peach." And I was like, even as a kid, I was like, why does she say Peach? Is that a nickname? Is that how she says ciao, goodbye? Like, what is that?
This is what my friends call me.
Yeah, that's right. Like I wanted to go down a rabbit hole of Mario lore. But just recently, I didn't even crack into Bowser's Fury until I got my fill of Mario 3D World. But I'm really liking it because it feels like it's definitely derived from the Super Mario 64, Mario Sunshine type of 3D Mario game. There's a lot of exploration. You can play it with a second player. They'll control Bowser Jr., but it's more of like a support role. But I'm really loving the open world style. Just run around. If I see something looks interesting, I'll go and run and jump on it as you do and probably get a shine for it. You guys have probably talked about this pretty in depth already, but I think like a lot of people, my only complaint, and it's not a big deal, is Bowser gets furious with me a little too often. It's like every 5-10 minutes he just reappears, and it kind of reminds me of survival horror games like Clock Tower and Haunting Ground, where at first the killer reemerging is very suspenseful, but after like the 6th time, you're like, just chill for a minute. I'm trying to do this thing right now. Yeah,
it's the worst when you're in the middle of like a really like prolonged, difficult platforming challenge, and you're like in the cat shine, and then it's like, oh, it's starting to rain. I have like 60 seconds before things hit the fan.
And it's definitely cool. Like it adds an element of trepidation, especially when that rain starts, that I think has been absent in Mario games. So I like it, and a lot of people think this might be a preview of like where Nintendo is headed for the next full-blown proper 3D Mario game. And I think that would be cool, but maybe a little less with the big bad kind of popping up to pester you, which is what it amounts to. Like after you get a handle on how to make him go away, he does become a pest, which I think is too bad because he's Bowser. He should never just be a pest.
Sure.
But that's really fun. Still, I was lucky enough to get a PS5 at launch. I bought an exorbitantly expensive bundle specifically for Demon's Souls Remake, which I still love. Managed to platinum that game. Just a lot of fun, a blast. I think photo mode might be my new. It's like the rain effects of the PS4 generation, where you have to, like, every game with rain effects has to show it off. And now I'm like, okay, if there's a photo mode, I need to just move around and go in all these houses that I'm not supposed to be in and just check them out. And then last, Animal Crossing New Horizons. I still play it every day just to, I might play for 20 minutes. I might play for an hour or two. That game, for a lot of people, it's been a security blanket during the pandemic. For me, it was that, but it was also my first Animal Crossing game, minus the 5 minutes I tinkered with the GameCube one way back when. I built like a 3-story library on my island. A couple of days ago, I spent like 3 hours and I built a movie theater complete with a ticket stand, concession area, 2 separate theaters where you actually go in and there are floor lights down the aisles so you can find your seat and get your popcorn and throw stuff at the screen as you do. Of course, movie theaters are empty now, and mine is usually empty, so it's very true to life as of right now. But it's just, there's just so much creativity and fun to be had with that game.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
my level of kind of self-expression, aside from creating my own house and everything in Animal Crossing New Horizons, which was also my first true Animal Crossing. I played New Leaf on 3DS for maybe an hour or two, and I was like, yeah, I don't really like this. And then Horizons came along, and I fell in love with it and put in a couple hundred hours. But my level of self-expression in that game was relegated to the kind of like the logo creator. And
oh yeah, that's fun stuff.
I ended up just recreating different pixel art characters. Like I have one that's like Pikachu's original sprite. I have another one that's I just did different pixel art recreations on those and turned them into flags and t-shirts and stuff.
So here's the depth of how deep I am in this game. I have 3 characters for 3 houses. In one of them, I have an arcade with all the coin-op games, all the pinball games, but I also, like Brian, I didn't do so much creating, but I did go in. I guess there's a way you can take pictures of things, and there's a way to kind of scan them into New Horizons. So I have really kind of fun and nowadays obscure stuff. In my game room, I have these video game posters, and there's one of the Batman NES sprite from 89 or 90 just on the wall. And I just think that stuff is really cool. The fact that people take the time to make that stuff. And I've only recently only recently started playing around with the design. Like I would go to other people's islands. I'm like, oh, how'd you get those like little that gravel path? And they're like, oh, I made it. And I'm like, you can make paths in this game? And I guess that the design app is being added as a phone app in the next update later this week. So,
like the one that actually lets you build roads?
Yeah. So like instead of having to wait for Able Sisters to open or time travel, you'd just be able to pull up your phone and make or download custom designs whenever you want, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited for that.
That is new. I hadn't heard about that. Yeah. Sounds like the perfect time to dive in for the first time.
Yes. Have
you never played, Ben?
No, I've never played.
Oh,
I keep threatening to. So, I keep.
It's so fun. I love that it came out the same day as Doom Eternal last year, because we had all like the Doom guy Isabel memes where he was like shotgunning imps and she's on his shoulder like, this is great, everything is great. And what an odd pairing. I guess there is an anniversary update coming in addition to the custom design portal being transferred to the phone as an app. You'll get there's like a 1-year cake and all this little items they have planned, in addition to the return of Bunny Day, which was the first holiday they had when the game released last year. So
everyone's favorite.
Everyone's favorite.
Collect those
eggs. That was my first time I stopped playing Animal Crossing every day when Bunny Day happened last year.
Yeah. I need to get back into it because I mean, this would probably be a bad time to get back into it because Bunny Day's happening. But like
these events are supposed to like get you excited to play the game, and it's like, nah, I don't really want to.
Bunny Day can do the opposite. It can.
Like I was literally thinking about it. It's like, man, I should get back in because the last time I checked in was New Year's, and it was just so I could catch the New Year's party, which I like barely missed. Like I missed the fireworks. So it was like the sad thing of showing up to a party when everyone's leaving, and you're just kind of grabbing the food that's left. Like I have this like wrestling ring that I was making because I'm a huge wrestling fan. I was like, this is gonna be my magnum opus, and then never finished it. So every time I see it, it looks like one of those pictures of like abandoned Olympic towns when they leave all the stuff from the events just there and they get reclaimed by nature. Like that's what it reminds me of. And I was like, I should really do something about that.
I've got a wrestling room complete with I have an announce desk with the equipment, and I can almost hear JR and the King there in my head talking about how the gnomes I have fighting have been, as God is my witness, he's broken in half. This man has a family. This gnome has a family, I guess. But yeah, just I also have a room with every gold item in the game. I should stop, but yeah. I love that game. I love Animal Crossing.
You're living my life is what I'm hearing.
Oh, man. Living my best Animal Crossing life with 3 characters, Marcus. So I'm covering for you and one other person, I guess.
Okay. Never have to log in.
Yeah, you, Ben. Well, you're a ninja. I mean, you're on like top secret stealth missions.
That's why I'm so sneaky.
So, yeah.
Great. Well, I think that probably wraps up our playlist. That's a pretty good look at what we've been playing. We should take a break, come back and do emails. But Brian, I know you got to go, unfortunately. That's kind of sad.
But I do want to leave you with a closing nugget of wisdom. I looked it up on the we-r-peach.fandom.com wiki. I didn't know that Peach had her own wiki on fandom.com, but here we are. But in Japan, her name has always been Princess Peach. But in the West, she was originally known as Princess Toadstool due to Nintendo of America renaming her when localizing Super Mario Bros., feeling that Peach was irrelevant to the theme of the Mushroom Kingdom. In 1993, the Western localization of Yoshi's Safari marked the first time that the name Princess Peach was used outside of Japan.
Oh, so it's a Robotnik Eggman situation.
It is, right?
Wow. Today I learned.
If she's a peach, why is she ruling over the Mushroom Kingdom? It is a weird
There was a coup. Nobody talks about it.
Well, peaches grow on trees, and mushrooms mostly grow on the ground sometimes.
That's true. So on the root of trees. She is above them.
They're trying to reach the peach because they're trying to get up to her level.
Come on, Nintendo. That works.
Yeah.
You don't need to change the name.
Oh, and they do say that Yoshi's Safari didn't sell well enough for the name to stick. So when they had that note in Super Mario 64 that David had referenced, where most people saw as like the first mention of Peach, they used that note as a transition from Princess Toadstool to Peach for Western players.
They're warming us up.
And that's why you come to the show, to learn information you can look up online. Thanks for listening, everybody. Brian, let me walk you to the door. Hey, Brian, hold up. I think those guys are out of earshot now, but I wanted to talk to you about something super secret. I heard you talk to the Avengers guys, the guys making the game.
Not the actual Avengers, but I talked to Crystal Dynamics, the people who
that's
make
disappointing.
Marvel's Avengers. Yeah, I mean, it would have been pretty cool to talk to Cap or Tony or something, but like, yeah, it was Scott Amos, studio head of Crystal Dynamics. That's pretty cool.
Okay, that's a real person.
Yeah.
Did they tell you anything interesting about the game? Because this is such a weird story where, like, a year ago, I think you and I were both pretty excited for that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the game came out and we played it. And I don't want to speak for you, but I had a good time. And I was like, well, this could really go somewhere. This could be a cool thing. And then it was like weeks went by, months went by, and it just felt like that game wasn't getting maybe the support we expected from it. Did they speak about some of that?
Yeah. So I'm very much in that camp where, I think that that story stuff that they put out, like the Reassemble campaign, it's called, where it's very like story driven, very cinematic. I think that stuff rules. I think that game is very fun. That's very well made. It's a fun story. There's some cheesy comic book moments in there, but that's kind of what you want from a Marvel game anyway. That said, yeah, the post game stuff, the multiplayer stuff, the online stuff, it just got so repetitive, and then there wasn't any content, there wasn't any communication. But then, they released Kate Bishop as the first post-launch hero. They released Hawkeye today, as well as the new gen version. And so, like, today was already seen as kind of a big day in like the lifespan of Marvel's Avengers, because there's the new gen release, which lets you upgrade your current gen version for free, plus transfer your save over. There's Hawkeye with his new story, and then there's they added a couple of features like the ability to replay your campaign and also the ability to customize harm rooms. So like today is already a pretty substantial day for Marvel's Avengers, but like I talked to them about their 2021 roadmap, which was just revealed today during Square Enix's stream. And they have a lot in store. But it also sounds like they have kind of shifted away from their original plan of releasing heroes at a pretty rapid rate. One of the things that Scott really talked a lot about was kind of like after it released, they wanted to make sure that like they were addressing the problems that were brought up by the community first and foremost. Prior, like they wanted to prioritize the stuff that was wrong with the base game before they went about adding additional things, like adding new heroes, adding new expansions and stuff like that. So they're doing, and they also realized that they did not communicate any of this enough to people, which I think that, I mean, again, I don't want to throw them too under the bus, but like it was very much like silent, like to the point that I was like, what the hell is even going on with this game? Like, I haven't thought about this game in so long. It's like, oh, they just announced like when Hawkeye's coming out. Oh, I forgot that was even happening, because like it was so out of the like my consciousness, and I wanted to love this game. Like the Marvel stuff is like some of my favorite things in the world. Like I own every single MCU and X-Men and like
dude, those have to be worth a lot of money.
What was that?
Those franchises have to be worth a lot of money.
You'd think.
That's a dumb joke. We can move on.
Okay. We can like sit on it for a little bit longer if you'd like.
Yeah, let the audience really stew on it and think about like, oh, that was clever, right?
Let us know in the comments what you thought of that joke. Rate it 1 to 10. So I stumble all over myself. All right.
Did they talk at all, like, because like their first two characters out, when I'm curious, and they got a lot of criticism for like, okay, you're releasing two Bow characters basically. How is it going to be that much different?
And Hawkeye. So I talked to the narrative director and the one of the gameplay designers who worked on both characters, and they actually like it makes sense if you play the campaigns, the story campaigns of those characters, like why narratively they're both in there, because Kate Bishop and Clint Barton are very, very connected in like the comics and everything, but also in terms of like the story that they actually tell in the game, Kate's story leads directly into Clint's story, and that is that makes sense narratively. But I like brought up like from a gameplay perspective, was there any hesitation there? And they were like, well, like we did it on purpose, so we developed them in tandem, so that way we knew like it wasn't like, all right, we're going to develop Kate and then we're going to develop Clint. It was kind of like simultaneous development, so that way they could make sure that they felt distinct enough. Because on the surface, you're right, like they're both expert archers and they both have a few gadgets and they also have swords for close range stuff. But So Kate is a little bit more agile, and she also uses like quantum tech that she stole from AIM, whereas Clint is more of like he has a lot more gadgets. Like he has like special arrow types, a lot more special arrow types than Kate does. And like that's more about it. And like he's a little bit more like brutal with his attacks because of his Ronin phase. But it still feels like it must have been some sort of misstep to like have both characters, both the first two characters announced as, you know, archers.
Well, and what you're talking about it like, oh, we developed them in tandem. I mean, that kind of makes sense that they would do that. And if they were releasing characters at a steady clip, like every week or even a couple of weeks, like I don't think it would have mattered in the long run. But yeah, since it's like 6 months out now, and these are the only two characters we've gotten, it does look a little weird. So I kind of wonder if they had an expectation that they're going to release characters more quickly at one point when they started work on the characters. I
think they absolutely did. And Scott Amos told me that like this is way slower than they wanted to go. And a lot of that was they reprioritized stuff after launch, and they were affected by like the work from home transition a lot more than they thought they were going to be. And they're like, well, we have a lot more efficiencies in place now, but it seems like there was a change of plans in terms of like how fast they're going to release these characters, like both from responding to community feedback about like just the core game and like the post game stuff, but also how like the pandemic affected everybody's efficiencies like everywhere basically. But yeah, so that's kind of like the talk we had about like releasing the characters that are out now, but in the future, so they're going to do different balance tuning, gear and progression is going to be revamped a little bit. And then they're also going to introduce these Omega level threat missions, which are like more enhanced versions of battles that you've done already. And it's meant to like be like kind of an ultimate challenge. Like they're going to give you all like really good rewards for it. Like for example, in Kate Bishop's story, you fight Super Adaptoid, which is like kind of like this like super powerful like robot that has powers that are like based on all of the Avengers. So like he can like float and shoot a repulsor beam like Iron Man. He can throw a hammer like Thor, and he has like a shield like Cap. So there's like a really beefed up version of that. They're going to start introducing stuff like that that's like just meant to be like ultimate challenges that require 4 players to go in and like kind of co-op these battles, and they give out really great rewards. They're going to do more with outfits inspired by the MCU, which is kind of cool. So like if you want your character to look, you know, like Captain America did in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're hopefully going to have stuff like that. They didn't specifically mention Cap, but like they said, like but who else would they be talking about, really? Well, I mean, I guess you could. The thing that would make the most sense, because it's going to be tied to an event that's coming this spring, which is the Red Room Takeover, which is Black Widow thing. Yeah, a lot of living games have like in-game events that are tied to real-world events that are going on. Real-world, like you know, if they're like the easiest example is like in Overwatch, when the Olympics typically happen, they have the Summer Games event. And like a lot of Marvel games, like the Marvel mobile game I played, Marvel Strike Force, every time there's a movie or a TV show coming out, they typically try to play off that. Like they just announced there's going to be a Falcon and Winter Soldier event coming up. And it's like, I asked them, I was like, was it in Marvel Strike Force, you're saying? In Marvel Strike Force, yes. Yeah, but in clear. Marvel's Avengers, they're going to have the Red Room Takeover, which is going to be the first kind of MCU homage. They don't want to call it a crossover event because it's not like, you know, the worlds are colliding or anything like that. But like, it's kind of like an acknowledgement of the MCU within the game. So basically, Yelena Belova, who's kind of Black Widow's like the blonde rival. Black Widow. The blonde Black Widow, basically. Yeah, basically like a rival of Natasha's / like another trained killer, basically. Mm-hmm. She has started putting surveillance chips in different AIM robots that are going around, and you have to, I guess the Avengers have to go around and like take them out, and then they get trapped in the Red Room. And I guess Yelena has hacked the harm room that they used to train, so it turns into the Red Room, and they have to, I guess, figure out the source of the hack, and then escape by completing all these different challenges. So that's like just one event,
neat.
and that's the first time that they're going to start incorporating these MCU outfits. So I would imagine Black Widow would be a good candidate for the first time that they're going to get like an MCU inspired outfit, which is good because I was looking at I played the Kate Bishop story recently, and I was looking at Black Widow's costume, and it's one of the ones that needs the most work, I think, in terms of like bringing it up to speed with how players kind of view people who like the movies kind of view that character, I think.
Sure, that's fair. Yeah, did they tease Spider-Man at all or any of the other characters?
So I talked to them and I was like, hey, like, what's the deal with Spider-Man? And Scott said, PR has allowed me to say that we have people working on Spider-Man right now and we hope to talk about it soon. So that's all we have for that. However, you may have seen in today's presentation that there was a new expansion announced for later this year called The War for Wakanda. And as the name indicates, that introduces Black Panther as a hero. But they're calling it an expansion, whereas Kate and Clint were both operations. And basically the differentiating factor there when I asked Scott was that this is going to add so much more. Whereas like the operations that you play as Kate and Clint, they kind of they reconfigure things that are already in the game while adding like maybe a new villain or a new biome for you to explore. But this is like they're adding Black Panther. They're adding a whole new campaign surrounding like this war within Wakanda where Claw, who's like a longtime Black Panther villain, is working with AIM to try to invade Wakanda and presumably to take their vibranium so that AIM can use vibranium in their creations. So the Avengers kind of want to work with Black Panther to stave off the invaders while also protecting the vibranium so AIM doesn't get even more powerful. They're going to increase the power level cap. They're going to add new villains, including Claw, so that they're hinting that there's going to be more than just Claw coming in terms of villains. New Wakandan jungle biome, and also new outposts and new NPC types, new villain type or new enemy types. So it sounds like there's a lot of stuff coming in that, and they're calling it an expansion instead of an operation to indicate like or to denote how it's much bigger than what we are getting with Kate and Hawkeye. And
is that going to be free then?
Still going to be free.
Great.
Yeah, I made sure to clarify
awesome.
that because I was like, expansions are usually paid, so you're not going that route, are you? And he's like, nope. Still, like, if you own the core game, you get all like the characters and all of the expansions and everything.
I guess they're making money on those costumes then.
I guess, yeah. I mean, good for them. There's also some other things coming down the pipeline. There's the Tachyon Anomaly. So it's basically just like missions that will allow you to use multiple of the same hero. So if you want to go in and like use 4 Hulks, you can. And there's going to be different rewards if you just, for completing like, all right, you did this mission with 4 Hulks, it's going to give you like special rewards and stuff for doing that. So that's something that people have been asking for, and it's going to be like a wide range of levels, like power levels 1 to 100 are going to be covered in these. So like whether you've been playing for a while or you're pretty new to the game, you're still going to be able to enjoy those. That's like a lower level of interest for me personally. Like I don't mind. Oh, somebody chose Thor, I'm going to be Iron Man instead. Like, I don't know. There's, especially as the character roster continues to expand, it's like, I'm not super picky about the characters that I am. There's not really many that I don't like playing at this point, which is good.
Yeah, it's good news. Maybe it's the time to dive back into Avengers. Maybe it's starting to light up again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the gameplay is pretty solid. It's just they did say they want to address the repetition, and that's what they're trying to do with all these like other content drops, rather than making it so every time, the only time they really introduce new meaningful content is when they introduce a new hero. They realize that's not the way that it should go right now, and so they're doing a new thing called they're introducing the Cosmic Cube, and basically Scientist Supreme is trying to develop a Cosmic Cube, and it's going to introduce a new Scientist Supreme villain sector. And it's also going to introduce like a new story thing, like with a big boss battle between her and the Avengers. And like, I guess there's like technology enhanced Scientist Supreme clones just like a bunch of them that you have to fight at the same time while like you're in like this whole new area that looks pretty trippy. And I guess it's also a story involving Hank Pym, so that's pretty cool, like going through that stuff. And then there's a new Warzone mission type called Patrol, where you just kind of are dumped into an area and you can go around and just complete missions. There's no like set mission for what you're supposed to do when you go into that area. So that's just something that other living games like Destiny have done for a while now, where you can just kind of go run around and complete little tiny tasks throughout the world or fight enemies if you want to do that. And that's looks like it's coming to the Wasteland first, which is the new biome introduced in Hawkeye's story.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, it sounds like they have been working on the game, which is nice to hear because they were so quiet for so long. Mm-hmm. So it's good to get this update. Obviously, people can go online and watch the whole thing if they want to. But you also wrote some stuff up on the site, correct?
Yeah. So I have an interview that went up on Tuesday or Wednesday that was with the team about just specifically about Hawkeye and like kind of what they wanted to accomplish with that. You can read their answer to my question about like, you know, what about the apprehension of introducing two archers back to back? And then today I had kind of like a breakdown with quotes of all the things we just covered right now. So if you want to hear more about the features that we talked about today, straight from the developers' mouths, or I guess mostly from Scott's mouth, you can go on GameInformer.com.
Cool. Well, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Oh my gosh, look at the time. I should probably get back to those guys and do some emails. Do you think they've noticed that I've been gone this long?
You're the worst at this point.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to pretend like nothing happened. So wish me luck. Bye. Welcome back, everybody. We're here to do some emails. These are emails that you send us, podcast@GameInformer.com. Brian had to go. Marcus and David are still here. And, oh, who's this? Somebody wandering by? Leanna Rupert.
Wild Leanna has appeared. I'm here to crash the party.
Hey, do you want to answer some emails?
Just do it.
The emails that they send to the show, obviously. Not your own personal emails, but work aside for a minute. You missed the playlist section, Leanna, but do you have anything exciting to share that you've been playing?
Yeah. I have been playing the new Outer Worlds DLC, which if anybody was a fan of Obsidian's Outer Worlds, I definitely recommend playing it. The charm of Outer Worlds was the fact that it was a parody of corporations. It was like a very morbid, satirical humor that was equally like grotesque as it was hilarious. And I feel like the studio kind of veered away from that a little bit with the previous DLC. But the new one is called Murder on Eridanos, and it is a murder mystery where it's a completely new area. It's completely new dialogue, new faces, new NPCs. You take your old crew over there and you got to solve the murder of a very popular actress. And it gets really twisted and wild. And I like the fact that they kind of went back. They listened to fan feedback. A lot of fan feedback with the original game was they weren't really, there wasn't as many character interactions as they would like. They wanted to hear more input from like Pavardi, which obviously, like Max and all of them. And they really implemented that here. You could tell. And everybody's just very immersive with it. Like everybody is interactive when there's some weird that happens when you're trying to uncover this mystery. And is it a good mystery? It's a good, there's the plot thickens moment towards the end, which you expect. And it was really well done. They did a great, I kept expecting them to have like a musical. Like there were some parts of it that was like those musical episodes of your favorite TV shows. And I kind of expect them all to break out in song and dance. Never happened, but it should, because it gets pretty weird. Everybody is very happy.
We could use more musical numbers in games, I think, honestly.
Outer Worlds could get away with that. They could make it work.
They totally could. That sounds like that last batch of DLC, Peril on Gorgon or whatever it's called, was not great. You could totally skip by that and just jump straight to this, right?
Yeah, you can just, you need to have be a level 30. So definitely recommend beating the game. But it's kind of cool too, because whatever you do in this will actually impact the ending of your base game. So if you go back and re-roll the credits, you will see a pretty significant impact on the choices you already made, which was kind of cool. But yeah, it's I can't recommend it enough. It was the perfect blend of comedy and mystery and intrigue, and I was sad to see go. Oh, I do recommend though, if you're gonna play it, do spec out everything but your intelligence and do a dumb run, like a done playthrough.
Okay.
Oh my god, it is comedic gold. If you are in a rut or you just need a spring of happiness, do a dumb playthrough of the Outer Worlds.
I enjoyed my dumb playthrough of just the main campaign, so I highly recommend that. There's a good dumb ending too if you really stick to your guns.
Oh yeah,
it's worth seeking out. So, well, that's cool. Glad to hear it. And I think there's a review going up on the site now, right?
Yeah, we had our preview go up, and then we've got something special coming up next month too about it. But yeah, we got some stuff on the site if anybody's interested. That we go a little bit more in detail without spoiling, so you don't have to worry about any big plot points being spoiled for you.
So stay tuned. Okay, let's see. Well, let's get into podcasts.
Let's do it.
Let's get into this podcast. Finally do it. Why don't we say it? Yeah, we'll do some emails. Podcast@GameInformer.com if you want to send us an email. Good example of what we're looking for is this first one from JV from DC. They write in, it says, like many others, I downloaded the Final Fantasy VII Remake off PlayStation Plus this past week. I passed on it last year, hoping/waiting for a PC version, but I can't really argue with free. I love the original Final Fantasy VII, and the original was the first game that I ever really anticipated and was hyped for. They go on, he says, anyway, he loves the new game as well. And so his question is, what other modern, linear, story-based games can you recommend? I loved The Last of Us Part 2, and while not story-based in the same way, I enjoyed the linear progression in Doom Eternal. I just picked up 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which I'm also really excited for, but do you guys have any other recommendations?
I'll throw out the Resident Evil 3 remake. It's definitely, I would say, a lot more linear than the RE2 remake. But I know this game was hit or miss for a lot of people. I think there were a lot of fans who were upset that the giant worm was cut because you need, worms add like plus 5 to video games. But I really like the tight focus on Jill as the prey and Nemesis as the predator, and how they almost kind of switch roles by the end. Like Jill is just this badass who's coming to her own. The story and the writing and the voice acting, I actually think are really good. I'm one of those RE fans who's always kind of ironically, sometimes unironically, loved the narrative in those games, but RE3's was just really tight. Not as much exploration again as in 2, but if you're in the mood for a good action horror story, that one is fantastic.
Yeah, and like he said, if he's in the mood for a linear game, then exactly. Maybe that is a good go-to. I think Resident Evil 3 kind of unfortunately sits under the shadow of Resident Evil 2 remake, and I think 2 is a better game, but it's kind of sad that it got overshadowed.
It's history repeating itself, because the same thing happened in the 90s. Like I think it was like 18 months between them, and this time it was like 14 or 15 months. And I was like, well, on the one hand, I'm glad this is coming out so soon. On the other hand, and Mr. X was so damn good that I was like, well, they
really went all out with that remake.
Yeah, it just put more
the marketing campaign.
Yeah, it put more pressure on Capcom, the studio that handled the RE3 remake, to do something special with Nemesis. And I think that's where the game gets divisive. But this is a really good linear horror-driven story. I really liked it.
That's awesome. Any other suggestions?
So we say linear. Are we like a game that has like no side quests or limited side quests? Because Final Fantasy VII has those. I'm just trying to nail down what.
Yeah, if he was into Final Fantasy VII, then I think anything goes at that point.
Yeah, I'm assuming just like not multiplayer focused then, or at least has a strong emphasis on story.
I think something with a strong emphasis on story is probably a good bet. I was going to suggest they already played Last of Us Part 2, so maybe they're already familiar with Uncharted, but it's right there. Those are a great series of games. They are actually fairly linear, but they're really fun. Indiana Jones style adventures. I think you can jump in with 4 if you really wanted to and just have a good time.
I would say, going like with Deathloop on our cover, I say go do Arcane's stuff, especially now that it's on Game Pass. So like those 2 Dishonored games, as well as Prey, which I think Prey and Dishonored 2 are some of the most somewhat underrated or underappreciated games of the last generation. Like, I don't know. I feel like they haven't quite gotten their due, even though people certainly love them. But I think like the story in Prey, I think, is really, really cool and goes some fun places. And both of those worlds in Dishonored 2 and Dishonored Prey are a blast to explore. The systems-driven gameplay in both of those games, as well as the first Dishonored, is really, really well done. And the powers you get in both games are great. If you have an Xbox and have Game Pass and you haven't played either of those 3 games, I should highly go for it. They're awesome.
My recommendation, I'm going to get pooped on for, sorry. But like, I feel like there's this one game that just got a lot of hate because of how short it was, because there was a lot of expectations going in, but it actually had a really charming story. If you like Tesla, like I'm obsessed with Tesla. I love the story surrounding his history and his impact on everything we know
Elon
today.
Musk.
I know he thinks he invented everything, but Elon Musk, like, slow your roll a little bit. But like, the Order 1886 was actually a really good story. And I know, I always get the reaction.
No, you're right. That movie, that is a good story. I just wish the game was better.
That's the thing is it didn't have enough, but I liked, like, I remember there was one sequence when you were getting ready to kind of go into like the medical area. I can't remember what it was, but there was this big opening sequence where you kind of go up these stairs and there's just waves of enemies that you're having to shoot. And just, I remember thinking that the combat mechanics were very, I didn't like it at first. It was very odd. But then when thinking about it in terms of like the Victorian era London, it kind of made a little bit more sense in that context. I enjoyed the combat more than I did the first time. But like, it had a wild story. You had freaking werewolves. You had arc guns. You had just
a mortal, what were they, like a mortal guardians, basically?
Yeah, like it blended science and supernatural really well. I would just say if you're interested, because like for me, like I like visual novels, so less action doesn't necessarily write off a game for me, and I think that kind of had it in its advantage. And I think I just don't have any expectations going into any games anyway. So I think that's a detriment and a boon for me at the same time. But yeah, if you don't mind the fact that you're going into a very cutscene heavy adventure, but I mean, we're all fans of Yakuza, and holy crap, is that cutscene heavy. And like, I don't know, go into it not expecting this like 50, 60, 70 hour adventure. Just appreciate it for the story that it has to tell. And it has a lot of charm that gets looked over. So if you're looking for a good
games
story,
too, where it's almost disappointing that they didn't make another one, because I think they could have iterated on the combat and mechanics a little bit more, and that would have helped a lot. But then also you can tell that they built out a world. They definitely built out a narrative that's larger than the one they told.
And that story ends on like somewhat of a cliffhanger too, from what I remember. Like they set up a sequel, and it's like a big cliffhanger. I was like, oh, I actually want to see where this goes. Like I hope,
we're starting it. The sequel
honestly, that's the sequel to that game is one of the like wish list things that I have in the back of my mind. I was like, I'm always waiting for like Ready at Dawn to kind of emerge and be like, hey, we're doing it. Cause like what you said, Ben, I think that game has a fantastic foundation. Like, I mean, not fantastic, like there's something there. It could have been better. But yeah, it's like a sequel to this addressing the problems of the first game would probably be really good.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad I didn't get the hate for that, because I was kind of bracing like, okay, I should probably go last year.
Hate-free zone.
No, the other one I was going to mention, and this is not really modern anymore at this point, but Portal 2.
Oh yeah.
Great single player, fairly linear campaign, but it's just such a blast to play those games. So if you haven't, for some reason, do it. Yeah,
that's actually that's a great recommendation, because you'll get the orange box, and I think all the stories in the Half-Life games are great too. So if you haven't played those, go from Portal to the Half-Life 2 games, which may or may not ever be finished. But speaking of cliffhangers,
I mean,
they're still good. They're still good.
Buy into a VR headset. I definitely recommend Half-Life Alyx. It's really good. Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times throughout the show, and
we should talk about it every show.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably could. It's a great game. All right, next email. Jared from KC writes in. He says, hello, GI crew. I wanted to ask you what really grinds your gears in the video game industry. That is to say, what trends, business practices, companies, small, obscure features do you really, really, really hate? And why? For me, I've been increasingly annoyed that Nintendo's price gouging. This is him saying, I don't know. Up to you guys. Price gouging, specifically Skyward Sword HD was the most recent example of this. The base game is $20 on the Wii U eShop. I also sort of hate the limited availability with the whole 3D All-Stars thing, which seems right out of the Disney playbook, which she's probably not wrong there. Anyway, I digress. What are your biggest pet peeves in the gaming industry? What really grinds your gears?
I think this didn't used to bother me, but I've noticed this about myself in the last probably like 2 or 3 years, that I've increasingly lost patience for game reveals that only have like kind of pre-rendered CG cutscenes.
Yes.
Like those can still be like kind of cool, and it varies on like by the game. Like if it's something like a sequel to something I'm really excited about, I'm probably more excited that it's happening than what they're showing, honestly. But yeah, like I get nothing out of those anymore for the most part, or it's just like I don't know what I'm even excited for. Like this is like, and especially like, you know, as you learn more and more about like, you know, like trailers for even gameplay trailers are all smoke and mirrors more often than not anyway. So you kind of take everything with a grain of salt, but those are like the grainiest of salts. It's just this. It's like, wow, that looks cool. I guess that game probably doesn't look anything like that, or maybe it won't. I don't know what to make of this other than they're doing it. Sure. But like
choice.
I think on the same token, game studios have gotten more comfortable with showing gameplay for the first time, or like announcing games and like having them come out within a reasonable time frame, and like, you know, like, oh, it's only 6 months away or something like that. And I feel like there's a little bit less of like, this won't come out for like 3 years or something like that. So I think that makes, when people go the other way, it makes it sting more of like, oh, we're still doing this pre-rendered cutscene crap.
I love that you said that 6 months though, because that's literally what I was going to say. I think the 6 month window is something that should be adapted more widely, because we are, you know, I understand like from a marketing angle, I get why we used to do like, there's this game coming soon, and then it's like not going to release for 2-3 more years. But like it's that model of marketing was very effective years and years ago, but it's completely outdated now with social media. Everything's reactive. We're reactive on the industry side. We're reactive on the consumer side. Everything is too reactive, too fast paced, too accessible. We have, you know, with Discord and Twitter and all of these things, the line to developers and the line to PR, the line to these studios is thinner than it's ever been before. Now consumers have a direct line to these companies that are creating these adventures that we're excited for. So because of that, we don't need that 2-3 year life cycle of marketing. We don't need it. It's all right there with live stream, especially with COVID, showing the power of live streams, showing the power of marketing from home, not having to invest these thousands of dollars in these live events. It's just not data. It's not applicable anymore. The formula is outdated. But if we do the 6 months, we have a more accurate representation of what the game's going to look like at launch. We know that the game is getting close to being ready for launch. It's getting closer to that gold standard. And you're not going to have, what you're also doing is you're cutting down potential reactivity, because when you have these years expanses in between the announcement and the launch, look what happened with Cyberpunk. You start getting these issues where everybody's got their opinions, everybody's got their conjecture. And if it happens long enough, what's the one thing that people say regarding lying and stuff, of tell yourself a lie long enough, you start to believe it? Fans, industry, whatever, you start telling yourself you're expecting XYZ out of a game long enough, you forget that was your own conjecture. That's coming out of your own theories, your own perception. That's not actual marketing. That's not what the studio's telling you. But because if you're doing this for 2-3 years at a time and everybody's feeding into that, you're seeing the Reddit boards, Reset Edra, websites, everything, you're all supporting these fan theories. You're really starting to disengage from reality a little bit. And that's only going to be hurt more by announcing a game and then not having it come out for years at a time. Do a 6 months. If you want to do the cinematic, here's a cinematic. We've got gameplay next month. Like, give a timeline, be more transparent. Cinematic, gameplay. If you want to do a demo, which is a whole other thing, I'm kind of against demos, but like, do a demo, release. Boom. You're still going to have the conjecture. You're still going to have the fan theories, but you're going to cut down on that a lot. It's going to be a little bit more controlled.
Yeah. I just hate long checkpoints in games. That's my thing. Yeah, I think when you're playing a game and you die and you're like, when did I last save? And it was like 20 minutes ago. Oh man, that's just so disappointing.
They don't tell you either on the side, like, hey, you last saved 15 minutes ago. You might want to do something about that.
So that's the other thing is like when I go to quit a game, tell me when I last saved. Or like if I can't automatically save and you don't tell me if my game is saved and I hit the quit button, you're like, hey, you'll lose all your saved progress. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I save? Like, when's the last time I saved? Tell me that.
Yeah, I usually what I do is I go to the load game and look for a timestamp. Like, is it 15 seconds, 15 minutes? Save me that time and just tell me how long it's been since I got saved.
Yeah, save us some time, developers. Just tell us when we saved. That's all we ask.
Don't make us wait for games and then give us shorter checkpoints.
That's right. It's all about time and not wasting it. Those are some good points all around, I want to say. Matt from near Philly writes in, says, I've been playing Persona 4 Golden on my PC for the first time, and I can't bring myself to skip the opening video before the main menu. The music is just too good. It just makes me happy. What are the best video game intros before you press any buttons to get into the main menu?
Ooh, boy. One of the first one that came to mind, I think Cuphead, that song in the beginning. When I first played that game, almost every time I booted it up, I waited for it to finish the song before I started playing. But my go-to is honestly every Mortal Kombat game from the 2000s, like those 3D games, like Deadly Alliance, Deception, Armageddon, and as well as Shadow Monks. Those intros are so good. They had like a streak of doing these amazing action-packed like cinematic sequences. Armageddon might be the king of them, which is funny because it's probably the worst of those games. But it has the coolest intro because it's like every character ever in this giant battle with like a pyramid. And they're just trying to climb a pyramid. But they are so well done and they get you so pumped up for the thing that you're about to do. So I'd lump in all of those. And then an honorable mention to the opening of Final Fantasy VIII. Like,
how does 8 start? 8 starts with him like fighting. They're fighting with their guns.
Squall and Cypher on the beach, and that amazing song is for.
So is this the opening scene, or is this before you hit start on the game?
I think it's before you hit start. Like you don't touch anything. Which all the intros, at least I named, like they just roll into it before you hit anything.
Yeah, because that changes things. Because my favorite intro would be like the opening sequence, like the first opening scene, which would be completely different. I don't know. You guys play Detroit Become Human? I kind of like that one where it's not like Dragon Age 2 is probably one of my favorites just because of the music. Like I've literally booted up a console and had Dragon Age 2 play just to hear that song because I love it. It's so haunting and things. But I really like Detroit Become Human because it's just creepy. Because if you leave it alone long enough, she starts just talking to you, and it's
that wasn't a song though, was it?
No, that's what makes it creepy too, because it's very silent and she's just looking around and then she's like, oh, what are you still doing here? And it's just like, I don't know, it's so creepy. I love it.
Literally
tells you like how long you played or something. Yeah.
And she'll like comments on things that you did in the story. Like, oh, you made this choice. Honestly, she was my favorite part of that whole game because I just thought the technology behind it, because she would like start jittering and her eyes would be twitching as you got deeper into it. And I just was staring at it like, man, that's so creepy. How realistic that looks.
Yes.
Yeah, those games look really, really good. I always want them to be better. I always want them to come together at the end and they don't. But
I'm gonna tie my answer to this one to the last question. Pet peeve first. I hate when I let a game play the first time I boot it up, which I always do, and I watch like a cinematic, and I'm like, "Oh, cool! I'm pretty pumped for this." And I press start, and they replay the cinematic, and I'm like, skip it, and you can't skip it. I'm like, "Oh no!" Like I remember Wind Waker did that, and it still to this day grinds my gears.
Off of that, I hate when you go to like pause a cutscene and it skips it. So
yeah, like let me
pause and skip.
Let me hit start, and then so like, oh, you want to skip? I'm like, yes. Now I've made the choice. Yes. I will say that I think my favorite cinematic, I love the music too, to the Raiders original question, is Demon Souls on PS3 and PS5. That it not only gets you pumped up, but it actually kind of shows off the gameplay mechanics. You see enemies kicking you around. That happens a lot in Souls games. You see some other phantom helpers come to your aid, kind of like, oh, here's multiplayer. You see this really big dragon. You're like, oh, that's got to be a boss, right? And sure enough, you fight that creature later. That I always watch that cinematic when I fire up the game. It's just great.
Yeah, the Metal Gear Solid 2, I think the intro for that, not the intro, but the opening, musical number was really cool. And also, speaking of fighting games, Marcus, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, that song is burned into my brain. It's like, I want to take you for a ride, and it's just like that one. That one lyric on loop. Yeah, it's just that. But for some reason, I don't know is that connected to like a larger song somewhere?
I think I've looked up the OST because I like that game's OST a lot, the soundtrack, and I'm pretty sure that's just it. They just got a lady in a booth. They're like, "Can you just say this over and over in a really soulful way?"
It's like whoever wrote the song just got drunk the night before and like, I don't have time to write a whole song. Here's a lyric.
It's 5:00 on a Friday.
Yeah, it's like, we're good. But it's just the opening music.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good song.
That is a good song. Cool. All right. Let's see. Next segment. We normally run this segment of the show called the Game Informer's Ultimate Character Rankings. We're going to put a pause on that just for a short bit through the rest of the month of March, because we want to do something called March Mayhem.
Ooh, okay.
Creative naming there, right? So basically, I put out a call on Twitter. I was like, hey, what characters you guys want to see in a fight? So what we're going to do for like the next couple of weeks is just have different character bouts. So you guys will send us characters that you want to fight, and then we'll say like, we think this character would win, and it'll be a bracketed system, and eventually we'll have one crowned winner of who would win in the fight. So it's the ultimate March Mayhem brawl, let's say. So we got a few submissions already this week. You guys ready for this?
I'm ready.
Always.
Like a perfect podcast host, I did not give you guys a heads up about any of this. So you guys are going in cold, just for the listeners. But are you guys excited? Does this sound cool?
Yeah,
pretty cool, actually.
Ring the bell, fight.
All right, ring the bell. Yeah, for the wrestling gurus here, this should be fun. All right, first mout, because it's March Madness. It's mout, not about. First mout is Master Chief versus Shepard.
Those are my two favorite characters. You can't know. I mean, I can't.
It depends on your build of Shepard, right? Can the Shepard just be an amalgamation of all the the things he can do?
Y'all, I wanted to be Master Chief for the longest time. That was like my goal in life, was just to be Master Chief. But Shepard, like literally, I can't.
I feel like Shepard's he can do more, right? Like Master Chief's basically Captain America with armor on, right? And then
Shepard dies.
Yeah, if this is a fight, Master Chief is not really my guy, but he's basically made to hit things really hard and shoot things. I feel like that would give him an edge.
But Shepard
he's a soldier. He's like an elite.
That's true. That's true.
But he's also got like space.
He's not elite though. He's not elite. He doesn't have any like elite's kind of in sci-fi. That's like boost up steroids type stuff. He's just he's like.
But he's got the biotic powers. Like he can push things.
He can, but not always. Only if you pick that class.
Well, I'm saying for this Shepard, since we don't know which version of Shepard, would he just be? Would he just be all the different types combined? Like he just has all his abilities that he could get.
See, that's the thing. We don't have to qualify Master Chief as much, right? Like any version, Master Chief is just a badass. You can throw those sticky grenades no matter what version you've got. You got dual wielding, although maybe not anymore.
I think, Marcus, you had a good point. Like Master Chief is basically Captain America in Iron Man armor. He's, I don't know how Shepard competes with that, even with his space wizard powers.
Okay. I'm going to hate myself for this. Like physically, I'm going to hate myself. I will say, as much as I love Shepard, and as much as Shepard has been like an inspiration and kind of one of those characters that I will always hold dear. Obviously, I literally have Shepard tattooed on me, but like the Shepard isn't anything by themselves. Like they're a good leader. I literally, my chief when I was active duty was almost exactly like the few times I played male. Almost exactly like Master, like somebody you would follow into hell, like you trust no matter what.
And he had biotic powers?
And they did not have biotic powers, which his loss, because that would have been really cool. But like Shepard, their strength is their crew. Like Shepard dies in Mass Effect 2 and only comes back not because of something they did, but because Liara's batshit crazy and went to the ends of the universe to find them. Like, and then the ending of Mass Effect 3, like it's
So you're gonna say Master Chief, right?
Yeah. Are you? This is
I'm just.
How are we?
this social interaction, okay?
Yeah. Are we voting? How are we determining the winner here?
I think we're all kind of agreeing that's Master Chief, right?
I'm going Shepard personally, but I guess.
Oh, really? Wait, why are you saying Shepard?
I just think he can do more ability wise. I mean, he can go. He knows how to fight hand to hand. He's like a trained soldier. He's not like a dude.
Chief,
well, I think as soon as you get hand to hand, it's Chief's fight. The only advantage Shepard has is keeping his distance.
Well, he can shoot. He knows how to shoot too, like Master Chief. But he has biotic powers. I think that I think he could edge Master Chief out a bit. I'm not saying it would be a very close fight. But I'm going to give it to Shepard. That's me. My Shepard.
I appreciate the Shepard love.
Master Chief.
David, what are you thinking?
I appreciate the Shepard love. I want to do the Shepard love, but I can't. And realistically, looking at the skills, as much as I've played both, I can't. They're not even to me, as much as I would love them to be. Shepard's not, unless we're talking about Shepard's crew. If we're integrating his crew, then nobody can come up to Shepard.
He's some like Marvel vs. Capcom assist.
Yeah, like an Endgame where they just all come through. Yeah. No, but if it's solo, if it's one-on-one, bare knuckles, Master Chief's gonna wipe the floor.
Yeah, what do you think, David?
I think it's Master Chief. I mean, he's the soldier you call in. He's like the weapon of mass destruction almost. Like you unleash him when you want to really get stuff done. Although I think Marcus he almost sold me on Shepard, but I just feel like it's Master Chief for me.
Yeah. I know I'm not technically on this episode.
Is this the voice of God? Who is that?
Is that you?
Just his son. It's okay. I can't believe this is even a conversation. Master Chief. All right, let's give Shepard all the biotic powers. We'll give him flame. We'll give him push or pull, whatever. Sweet. He uses that. Master Chief has an energy shield going. He ducks that. And then he can just charge him with an energy sword or like a plasma grenade. Like, this isn't even a fight. I love both of them. That's my piece. Goodbye.
Well, if the one from on high is Master Chief, I think we got to go with that.
God just mic dropped us.
That's right.
No, that was. Did the second coming of Christ just happen on the Game Informer show? He said it was his son.
You heard it here first.
Kind of been a big deal. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see if this next one's as debatable. You guys ready for the second bout?
Let's do it.
Waluigi versus 50 Cent from 50 Cent Blood in the Sand.
See, 50 Cent, here's the thing about 50 Cent. It's like, yes, he survived getting shot 9 times. That's impressive, I guess. But he doesn't have G Unit though. He's by himself. There's no Tony Ayo. The game's not there.
Okay.
Either Smash Brothers, so
Waluigi has maybe powers, by virtue of being a cartoon character. It makes him a lot more durable. He could take 1,000,000 bullets.
What are his abilities?
He's got long legs.
He can stomp you so hard that you get like slammed into the dirt. He can stomp you into the dirt, which means he's got powerful legs. He's like Hitmon.
Honestly, I bet 50 Cent could stomp me into the ground.
Could he crush your skull with his thighs? That's what I want to know.
I mean, the IRS beat 50 Cent, so he's not that hard.
Well, this isn't the IRS versus Waluigi.
I'm saying, like, I don't know, 50 Cent, maybe modern day, not what he used to be, but I guess Blood in the Sand 50 Cent.
But from Blood in the Sand, it's that specific character.
I like a good game.
It is a good game, but I like Waluigi more. So I think Waluigi has too many tricks up his sleeve, whereas 50 Cent just has guns, I guess.
That's the thing, is he's got a gun. I think he wins. Because
Waluigi occupies the Mario universe. He can use all the powers from that universe. So he could, theoretically, never seen it, but he could use a fire flower, superstar, maybe whip out a piranha plant.
Roger Rabbit rules, right? So in Roger Rabbit, you could like tussle with the tunes. Couldn't you like stretch and pull them and punch them? And
you could
hurt them.
He's a wily.
50 Cent's just a dude, though.
He is just a dude.
All right, what do you guys think? Leanna, David?
I want to vote Waluigi just because I don't know what his abilities are. Like, yeah, he's got Mushroom Kingdom power-ups at his disposal, but this to me is just the intrigue. Like, all right, Waluigi, I'm throwing you in against 50 Cent. What do you do? What is your thing? And then I'll just eat the popcorn while I see what happens.
I gotta go Waluigi.
I can't believe this is happening.
He is on high.
And known 50 Cent fan can't handle it.
All right, Waluigi takes it. In a surprise upset. All right, let's see what happens. We got at least two more we can go through. So you ready for this? The third match of the night: Kiryu from Yakuza series versus Bayonetta from the Bayonetta series.
Oh,
What?
Hear screaming in the background.
Yeah, this is like Sophie's Choice, but
Bayonetta is a witch, and she has magical hair powers, so that's pretty impressive. But Kiryu, I mean, he's basically... It feels like he's indestructible, right? Like he's Luke Cage or something. Like nothing ever... He can survive almost any punch.
But he is, like, classified as just a human. Like, the games, make him seem superhuman because he's taking out, like, hundreds of guys at once, but he is just a guy.
You want to talk about thighs that could crush a man's skull? Yes,
Bayonetta
honey.
kills angels on the regular.
I think that's,
And not just with her hair, but she's got guns on her. Like, she holds guns, she's got them on her boots, and she can use all those weapons, like a sword and stuff.
Yeah, Kiryu can survive any punch, but what about like a 132 hit combo with punches and gun? I got to go Bayonetta with this one.
Yeah, Kiryu, I love you, boo, but up against Bayonetta, you ain't shit.
Okay, I kind of thought I was going to lean that way. I wanted Kiryu to win, but it was kind of an underdog story. All right, that round ended, I think, in a round one knockout, unfortunately. Let's see. Final match of the night. This is the big one, guys. This is the one you've been waiting for. It's the Doom guy versus the L block from Tetris.
Obviously, the L block. Obviously.
See, here's the thing about the L block is that it's probably the worst Tetris piece when you're like mid to late game. It's like awful.
It's just because you have to have strategy.
I don't know, man. I always would take an L block over like a Z block.
I feel like the Z block, if you screw up with the Z block, I feel you can come back from that better than if you really blow it with the L block.
I just want to see a world where Tetris beats Doom. I think that would be glorious.
See, if the Tetris movie had come out by this point, we would have a better idea.
We'd have more data. We'd have a tale of the tape.
I'm here for the chaos that
the L block is cool because
brings.
You can use it as like a long piece, depending on how you build your sides. Sometimes you can use it on and get like not a full Tetris, but a few levels off the edge if you're getting a little high there.
Well, see, the point I was trying to make with it being like a difficult piece is that I think that kind of plays into its toughness. Like the L block doesn't conform with society's norms, which is why it's shaped in kind of an odd way. It's had a rough background. It's had to fight for everything it's ever gotten. But it still just has trouble fitting in, especially as it's gotten older. You would think it'd get easier, but it hasn't. The world changes around the L block, but the L block isn't down for it.
It is. It's the need to change. It's the Nokia of gaming.
Whereas Doom Guy is kind of the same guy. He's just angry and hates demons. And, that's gotten very far, but fighting is a mental game as much as a physical one. And I think that stagnation with Doom Guy, like it makes him predictable, you're like, oh, he's going to use his chainsaw or he's going to use his super shotgun. There's the L block. You're moving that thing around. You're looking at like where it could go. And you're like, I guess it could go here, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe it doesn't want me to. What if I turned it too many times and now it's upside down and I don't know how to fix that.
Here's how I see it going, Marcus. I think the match starts. Doom Guy runs out into the field. He's like, all right, I'm ready to take on anything. I got my BFG. He's like, where's this contestant of mine? And then from the sky descends the L block, and Doom Guy can't look up, right? The original Doom Guy couldn't look up. So the L block squashes him.
Oh, into a piece.
Not just squashes. I'm talking instant drop. Boom.
Beautiful.
Yeah, the fast drop. Does the fast drop?
Yeah.
Glorious.
Is it
I'm down.
Doom guy? I like that.
I just like
that
it.
match going some other way.
I just want to live in a world where the L Block goes up against Doom. I'm sold. I feel like the L Block, like, it destroys universes. If you do it the wrong way, your game is over. The world ends in that real gaming universe. Like, that's power, man. That's total power.
I mean, to Marcus's point, it has shattered my hopes and dreams on more than one occasion. A misplaced L Block, so I can see that. I've inexplicably, I'm going L Block.
Hell yeah, you are. You bet your sweet for going L Block. L Block's the winner, baby.
All right.
Well,
L Block is it. It's a surprise.
That's right. The L stands for lasting victory.
Not loser.
Nailed it. Not loser. Not loser.
No.
I was trying
This is going to go great this month.
Why do you think Waluigi wears an upside down L Block on his hat? Because he's a winner.
Secret of his power. What if they're like secretly working in tandem together, and that's why they're too powerful to be in Super Smash Brothers, because it would break the entire meta.
Is that what you do though when you're partner with somebody? You wear a picture of them on your hat.
Well, how are they going to know?
Don't you?
What do you mean? How are they going to know?
I think I'll know your partners unless you do that.
Unless you put a picture of your partner on your own hat.
Everyone shows their colors. He could have worn a bandana and his pants or something like that. He's like, I'm going to put on my hat.
That's why we all wear our t-shirts with Joe's face on it when we get ready to start writing for the day. You wear the winners. You got it. That's what you do. Secret of power, man.
Hey, you guys are onto something. Write it up. That brings us to the end of March Mayhem. Feel free to write in your contestants, who you want to see in a matchup. Please, 1 entry per person. Send it to podcast@gameinformer.com. Send us other email, too. We love hearing from you guys. We love games. We love good questions, thought-provoking discussion. We'll take it all. All right, that brings us to the last segment of the show, a little segment we like to call Get Wrecked. It's where we recommend stuff to check out on the site. Recently, we did a spring buying guide. We usually do a holiday buying guide throughout every Christmas. I've been doing that for like 15 years at this point. Matt Miller's been helping me recently, and we did a spring buying guide. So it's the first time we've tried a buying guide outside of the Christmas season. So that is actually up on the website now if you want to check it out. There's some cool stuff in there. Cool toys and gadgets. I recommend checking out. Marcus, do you have anything you want to recommend?
Yeah. Read my Mundaun review. Check that out. It is a totally solid, totally solid horror experience. And then also, I know I'm going to put 2 recs in here because I am a huge Mortal Kombat fan. You should read Brian's impressions of that movie, or at least the first 13 minutes of the movie.
For sure. What about you, Liana?
I'm going to recommend. I changed it last second. I would recommend. We have a site that is kind of different than what we usually do. It's with a couple of influencers, because there's a new gaming show, or it's an animated show by the Rick and Morty studio called Alpha Betas. And we sat down with 3 of the stars. Basically, I Do Work, I Am Wildcat, and Terrorizer. And they've all got really big communities. I'm still kind of new to the influencer world, but like they've got combined like 15 million subscribers. Like they've got a pretty good community. But the interview was hilarious. Like I don't think we've ever laughed as hard as we did during that. So if you're interested, if you like streamers, or if you're interested in the show, it's by Rick Morty. It's got Brooklyn Nine-Nine people on it. It's got SNL people on it. It's got a good cast, and it's pretty funny. And if it gets picked up, it's going to get they're looking for a network right now, and the pilot is up on Vanos Gaming's channel. But you can learn more and see that interview on our YouTube channel.
Great. Thanks for that. And David, thanks again for being on the show. It's been a pleasure having you. What do you want to recommend that people check out, or how should people follow you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It has been a blast. Second, I got to do the obvious plug. Go check out Monsters in the Dark, my new book about the making of the original XCOM, which is funding on Kickstarter. As for what to check out, I have to go with a long-standing favorite, since it is my first Animal Crossing. I just love New Horizons. Anytime is a good time to get into Animal Crossing, especially since it's a Nintendo game and it'll be on sale in approximately never. So go check it out. Bunny Day is coming, right, Marcus? You got to get excited about Bunny Day.
Heck yeah.
It really is just, it's just, Ben, you got to try Animal Crossing, man. It's time. The time is now.
I thought you were playing for me.
Oh yeah, I am. That's true. I have 3 characters, so I guess I am.
Okay. Yeah, send them over. Send them my way. I'll check it out. I keep threatening to play, and this year it seems like it might be a little slow. So maybe there might be some time to check out a new game. But yeah, David, thanks again for being here. Do you have a Twitter or anything you want people to check out?
Yes, at David L. Craddock on Twitter.
Great. Well, thanks again. And thank you out there for watching or listening to this episode of the show. Please like and subscribe or subscribe to the magazine. Well, whatever you do, come back next week and we'll have another episode for you. Until then, game on, everyone.